Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video. So today I have a game between ljubojevic and planinc, and this game is going to show the power of a bishop pair and the coordination of pieces. So ljubojevic is white and he begins with e4, and we have e5 by black. And so now we have Spanish or Real Lopez, and this is just the main line. And here, black decides to play a sideline with b5, followed with bishop b7. So avoiding the main line, which is bishop e7, rook e1, b5, and d6. So instead, he plays b5 and then bishop b7, so immediately developing the light squared bishop. And here the main line, there's a couple options for white. So he can play d3, or he can play c3, or he can play rook e1, but white decides to play very aggressive. He plays d4 immediately, and so this is now actually considered not a very good move because black can just take on d4, and so here white can't take on e5 because black takes on b3 and then plays bishop d6, attacking the knight. And when white defends the knight, and then he takes on e4, and now black is up a pawn with the bishop pair and doing very well. So instead, white takes on d4, but here there's actually a very interesting sacrifice. So white can play bishop takes f7, so sacrificing the bishop, and now he takes on e5, so destroying black's castling rights, and then he takes on d4. So white has won his piece back, but now c5, queen to d1, and queen e8. And this is just a very complicated position where it may look like black is in a worse position with his bad king placement, but he has very active pieces, especially this bishop on b7, and he also has the bishop pair, and he can play for d5, bishop d6, and maybe h5, h4, and to activate the rook on h8. But instead, white just takes on d4, we have a trade, and here again, white needs to play e5, because if queen takes, then we can first play c5, and after a check, this will be very good for black, because he's threatening c4 to trap the bishop. So when white plays bishop d5, which is pretty much the only move, now black wins the pawn here, and he's doing very well. So white first plays e5, attacking the knight, knight e4, and white plays c3. So white is gambiting a pawn, playing very aggressive. So his idea is that if black takes on c3, white can play queen f3, threatening the f7 pawn with his bishop and his queen. So black will be forced to play d5, and after e takes d6, queen f6 is the only move to defend the pawn, and here white can play d7, king d8, and this position is slightly better for white after it takes here. But instead of that, black decides to play more aggressive. He plays d3. So the idea of this is that now after white plays c3, this knight is going to be very hard to develop because the normal square is c3. So now it will be forced to play to d2 or a3, which are not the best squares. So queen takes d3. White can still try for queen f3 like the other line, but now black can play queen e7, knight d2, and now knight c5. So discover attacking the queen with the bishop, and this knight also defends our light squared bishop, and this will be around equal after this trade. So instead, white decides to just take immediately, but now knight c5, and so black forks the queen and the knight, queen g3, and now black gets the bishop pair. So here, after these simplifications in the center, so we have this position where white is pretty much better developed because he's castled already, and he has pressure on g7, which makes it hard for this dark square bishop to develop, and black's king is also in the center, but black has the bishop pair, and white also has a damaged pawn structure. So the b pawns are doubled, and the e5 pawn can become a weakness. So here we have queen e7. So black is trying to castle queenside because there's no way to castle kingside without developing the bishop and losing the g7 pawn. So queen e7, bishop g5, and queen e6. And here this position is about equal if white plays knight d2, and then something like h6, bishop e3, d6, takes, and bishop f4, and castles. And this position is about equal, but with chances for both sides. But here white blunders and he plays f4, so white probably wants to support the center and play f5 and get aggressive since black's king is still in the center. But now black has a very nice tactical idea, so you can pause the video and see if he can find it. So for those of you who found it, good job. So the right move is to play f6. So here, the idea is that after f4, this bishop is blocked, so black can play f6. And now if bishop to h4, there's a nice move to play g5. So now this breaks up white's center, and after f takes g5, f takes e5, now black is doing much better because he has two center pawns, white has none, and white also has two pairs of double pawns, and his bishop on h4 is also trapped. And so black is just going to get castle queenside, play d5 and rook g8, and start attacking on the king side. So, which is why here white is forced to play e takes f6, but now bishop c5 check, king h1, and g takes f6. So here, if bishop h4, then black just gets castled, brings his rook over to g8, and then he pressures on g2 and g1 with his bishops. But instead, white can play rook e1, and here it looks like black is losing his queen, but this was part of his whole idea. So here he just castles queenside, so white takes the queen, so black sacrificed his queen, but in this position he's threatening rook to d1 back and back rank mate, so which is why white has to move his queen back to defend the back rank. And now black can take on g5, so he sacrificed his queen, but what he has now is he has these two very nice bishops aiming down at white's king side, and he can also coordinate his rooks to play to g8 or d2 and attack g2, the g2 pawn. And so here it may look like black's queenside may also be a little weak, but the problem is that if white ever wants to open black's queenside, he has to play one of these pawn breaks, but since the pawns are doubled, there's really nothing white can do. So if white ever plays c4, black can just play b4, close down the queenside, and b4 itself doesn't really do anything, as he can just move back. So after f takes g5, pretty much it's just black who's attacking, and white has to be very careful with his defense. So here he plays knight to d2, so he's unable to take on g5, because now rook to f8, and we open up the rooks. And so in this position, black's plan is he's pretty much just going to keep these bishops on the queen side defending the king, and he's going to have these rooks coming in on the king side. So after knight d2, he's going to play this very nice sacrifice. Rook takes d2, queen takes d2, and now rook to f2. So double attacking g2 and d2. And now if the queen moves, now we can just take on g2 with check. And when the king moves, rook takes b2. And now we're going to win the queen because this is the only move, and rook takes f2. So which is why white has to play knight d2 here. But now after g takes f4, queen takes e6 and king b8. Now black has the open g file. So as you can see here, he just plays rook to g8, and now he's just gonna put pressure on the g2 pawn. So c4, but now just b4. Like I said before, there's just no attack for white because the only way to open the queen side is for any sacrifices, but they just don't work. So rook to f1 and rook g6, so getting ready to double on the g file. Queen f5, bishop e3, just defending the f4 pawn. You don't want to give away this pawn because it might be an attacking piece eventually. So h3, so white wants to give his king a little bit of space on h2. But now rook to g3, so immediately taking advantage of the weakness that white just created. And after queen takes h7, bishop takes f3. This is a very nice tactical sequence. So as you can see here, bishop takes f3. And here there's two options for white, but the problem is that both of them lose immediately. So in the game, white played rook takes f3, but if g takes f3, there's a very nice sequence of quiet moves that immediately win the game. So you can pause the video and try to find the winning idea. So yeah, the best move here is to play rook to d2, just a quiet move getting to the second rank. And now black's plan is just going to be to play rook to g2 and rook to h2 checkmate, and there's just nothing white can do here. He's eventually going to have to sacrifice his queen, so he can give a few checks right now like queen h8, but just king b7, and whatever you do, just rook g2, and rook h2 is unstoppable. He's going to have to give away a lot of pieces. So which is why in this position, white took with the rook, but now rook d1 check, king h2, bishop g1, king h1, and now there's a very nice tactic to win the game. So here black plays rook to g7, so he's just sacrificing his rook, but the idea is that if you take with the queen, now we can play bishop to d4, so we attack the king, and when the king moves, we take the queen, and now black is up a piece. So instead, white gave a check, but just king b7 and rook d3, so white is trying some tricks, and if you take on d3, then white can take on g7, and now he's okay. But here, black plays rook e1, and now white is losing. So he plays g3, because here, if anything else, like queen h6, then we have bishop f2 check, king h2, and bishop g3 is check, rook takes, and pawn takes, and this is checkmate. So which is why white has to play g3, giving space to the king, but bishop d4, king h2, and rook to e7, and in this position, white resigned the game because black is going to play rook to e2 check and mate. So anything you do, let's say h4, here we can just give a check, and if king takes, then we just take on the queen. And yeah, this queen is also attacked, and there's no way to stop both checkmate and rook e2. So this game shows a very nice idea of how to coordinate your pieces. So after the queen sacrifice, here black kept his bishops on the queen side safely protected and defending the queen side and black's king. And you can see how black's rooks just came in on the king side and went to attack, while the bishops attacked from long range and eventually won the game. So I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video.